Welcome to the Real Faith Podcast with me, your host, Chris Goins, a podcast featuring real talk with real people about God, theology, and life. Our goal, authentic, vulnerable, and raw conversations on a variety of topics with a view towards looking at what God's Word has to say. These conversations will help you apply your faith in God's Word to the real challenges of life. With that, let's jump into today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us for the Real Faith Podcast. It is an honor to have Zach Walker, my friend, colleague, one of the pastors at A2 Church in the house today.
Hello.
Hey, Zach. Hey, Zach, this is very cool. We're only 2 weeks into the Real Faith Podcast. We've already had over 700 downloads.
Come on.
With this podcast, we'll probably hit 1,000.
Yes, sir.
So I want to just say to people before I more formally introduce you, make sure you subscribe and you share, because our big purpose is to add value to people, and we really believe this episode is going to do that. So Zach, again, it's great to have you in the house. Before we get started on today's subject, hey, give our podcast audience a brief description, rundown of your bio, where you were born, raised, education, family, so on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Pastor Chris, for having me on the Real Faith Podcast. Huge fan.
You are.
Just glad to be here for sure to contribute. But yeah, well, I mean, just a little bit about me. So born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Go Dogs. But for sure, let's see, I'm married to Shelby. And she's way out of my league. And she definitely is my better half. We have a 2.5-year-old little girl. Her name is Ellie. She is of the canine breed, but we still consider her to be our little girl. And but she is an English bulldog, and we pour a lot of love into her. And I mean, let's see, what else? Education. Went to Pelham High School here in Birmingham, then went to UAB, studied business. God called me into ministry towards the end of that journey, so applied to seminary at Beeson Divinity School, and I just finished that program in January. So
yeah, and I wish you knew Zach personally, because Zach started here as an intern. It was very, very quickly that we knew we wanted him to become a permanent part of this team. He leads our Next Gen Ministries, and he's also one of our pastors, does an exceptional job. Zach, I'm glad to have you here today, because I want to talk about something I'm really passionate about. The title of this episode, a little bit different, and this podcast is going to be broad in the scope of things we talk about. The title of today's podcast is This is Halftime.
Yes.
This is Halftime.
Yeah, we're both huge sports fans. Yeah. And so I just love the idea behind this podcast episode, and how when we're recording this, it's day 182 on the calendar. And there's 366 days in the year. So we are legitimately like in the halftime period of the year, which is a great time in sports to look back on how the first half went, and then to spend some time making some adjustments for the second half. So, Pastor Chris, with that being said, just what are some thoughts on how the first half of 2020 has gone?
The first half of 2020. You know, 2020 is a term for normal vision. Normal vision. It's not perfect vision, by the way, which some people say it is. Yeah. It's simply normal. Guys, I don't think anyone could have seen this coming. I mean, by all accounts, it is absolutely the weirdest year I've experienced in 55 years of life. It'd be one thing if you had a worldwide pandemic health crisis to deal with, but on top of that, we had, because of the lockdown, a number of layoffs, a number of furloughs. We had the economy in a state of great uncertainty, and even now, I think the latest numbers are an unemployment rate of 13.9%. In Alabama, it's 9.9%. Those numbers are high, but they're not nearly as high as the experts first predicted. But then we weren't really even catching our breath, dealing with a health crisis and an economic crisis, before we were hit with a racial and social crisis that has literally left this country reeling and hurting. So I don't know about anybody else, but I'm ready. I've stated this before and I've been corrected. But there are points in these first 6 months where I've just been ready for 2020 to be done.
Yes.
Anybody else there?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've heard the same things. I've probably even said it, like, man, I just wish 2020 was over.
Yeah.
And especially all of the anticipation coming into this year. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to be my year. 2020 vision. Like, I'm going to see things clearly, finally. And now all of this has happened. And so that's why I just love the idea for this podcast, because basically you're kind of flipping it on its head of saying, even though we would want for this year to be over, there's actually still so many good things that we can get from this year. And I know that you're a huge movie guy. I'm really not so much. I'm that movie guy that, people, actually, this just happened with me and you yesterday, Miller, where people will say, hey, have you ever seen such and such movie? And I'm like, no, I've never even heard of that movie. But I know that you're a huge movie fan.
The movie was The Patriot, by the way.
How have you not seen The Patriot?
I've not seen The Patriot. And I was like, is that the one where the faces are blue? And he was just like, no.
Another Mel Gibson movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Altogether.
So, you were just talking a little bit before we started recording about Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, it's not a great movie. Came out in 1999, directed by Oliver Stone. All-star cast ensemble in it. But the main star is legendary Al Pacino. He plays 31-year veteran coach Tony D'Amato, and it's a fictional football team called the Miami Sharks, and this team is plagued in this year by some infighting, by strife, by division, and the team has had moments of greatness when it looked like it was just going to explode and be dynamic, but because of infighting on the team hasn't reached its full potential, and they're in, I believe it's the 13th game of the season. If they lose the game, they're out of the playoffs, season done, everything over. If they win the game, they get into the playoffs with a chance to play for the title game.
Sure.
And the movie, again, it's not a great movie.
Yeah.
But it's well known because of the speech that Al Pacino delivers before that 13th game. I mean, it's one of these moments in cinematic history that people quote right and left, and I can't do it Al Pacino justice. But I do want to quote a few lines out of it. He's looking at this football team. And by the way, many of the players on the team are aging players, like the QB, the starting QB. It's probably going to be his last season.
Yeah.
I mean, he's ran full steam for many, many seasons, and his legs are just probably at the last end of their mileage. And yet there's a younger quarterback on the team played by young Jamie Foxx, who's threatening the older quarterback played by Dennis Quaid, and you can feel that tension. But in this moment, Al Pacino looks at the team, and this is what he says. I won't read the whole speech, but it's powerful. He looks at the team before they go out on the field and says, I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes till the biggest battle of our professional lives all comes down to today. Now, either we heal as a team or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're all in hell right now, gentlemen. But I want to pause right there and ask you, does it feel like that in 2020 right now? We're all in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the crap kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell 1 inch at a time. Now, I can't do it for you. And boy, when he says this, you feel it because he's an older guy. I'm too old. I look around, I see these young faces, and I think, I made every wrong choice a middle-aged man can make. I threw away all my money, believe it or not. I chased off everyone who's ever loved me. And lately, I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror.
Wow.
I just want to ask people listening to this podcast, you ever felt like that? You know, Pacino continues, when you get old in life, things get taken away from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. And boy, this is when the speech gets incredibly powerful. So is football. Because in either game life or football, the margin of error is so small. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. And on this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. Wow. We claw with our fingernails for that inch because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the difference between winning and losing, between living and dying.
Wow.
And Zach Pacino goes on, he finishes his speech. The team absolutely goes insane. They go out onto the field. They pull off an upset victory. They win the next game until they finally lose in the equivalent of the Super Bowl. But I love that speech. It's not a halftime speech, but it's powerful. And what I want to say to people in the podcast audience is this. Are you going to cash in on the 180 or so days left in 2020? Or are you going to fight for this inch?
Yeah.
Are you going to fight for this day? Are you going to fight for the 180 whatever days, depending on when you listen to this episode? Are you going to fight for each day? Are you going to fight to bring something good, something beautiful, something pure, something hopeful, something helpful out of each and every day God gives you? Are you going to make the necessary adjustments so that regardless of what happens, hey, we don't know this, but 2020 could get worse.
Sure.
But will we make the necessary adjustments so that when we end this year, we end making some improvements and some gains?
Yeah. Geez, those are well, that's a great example. I haven't seen the movie, but that I'm just thinking about that speech and kind of what he's saying about fight for that inch. And, you know, what I'm thinking about is just how this year has been, like we've talked about, so just drastically opposed to what we wanted it to be and we're hoping for it to be. But it's because of the fact that we've had so many traumatic things happen this year that I think that the rest of this year can be so powerful. I mean, you know, just to be able to fight for that inch, it's almost as if, like, you know, if we don't make these adjustments, then really then we're not going to be serving the purpose that this first half of the year could ultimately serve in our lives.
It would be horrible.
Yes.
To waste this amount of pain.
Wow.
Horrible to waste this amount of pain.
There's a lot to think about there. Well, I know that there's 4 areas that you think we should take during this period of our life, and for listeners that are listening during this month that the podcast drops, you know, it's halftime, so to speak. But I think that really these 4 areas, these 4 principles are applicable if you're listening 3 months from now or 3 years from now. It's just great to pause and to reflect on the previous season that you just went out of and that you're about to go into. So 4 areas, 4 halftime adjustments. What is the first halftime adjustment?
Yeah, I believe we all need to start with our relationship with God. At the end of this year, you're either going to end up closer to God or further away from God. Now, I know that in this podcast audience, not everyone claims to be a person of faith.
Sure.
And by the way, we're so thankful that you're listening. And we don't want you to feel any pressure to make a move in any direction. But because this is the Real Faith podcast, I would be less than authentic if I didn't believe that faith actually matters.
Yes.
I know for me, first 6 months of the year, faith has been the stabilizing force of my life. And I really want to encourage people to end this year by growing closer to God, building the kind of relationship that will give you stability and strength in these times of uncertainty. So that's the first area that I think we always start with halftime or game time adjustments regarding.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know that Shelby and I have talked at least a few times over the last 6 months about how important our faith in God has been to us, and especially on just having God's word available. And we've just kind of talked about, I mean, how unthinkable it would be for us to have trekked through that time without those things that we cherish so much. So I think that's great. So number 1, relationship with God. And number 2, you say, is relationships with people. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, man. Are you getting closer to family, to friends, by building and nurturing relationships of love, acceptance, forgiveness? There's not a lot we can count on in this world, but if we can finish with our family and great friendships intact, that is powerful. And I believe also, Zach, in this moment, there are a lot of people who have been acquaintances that would like to become friends. And if we'll be intentional in building that relationships, we may be able to add to our friendships by the time this year ends. So I would say start with a relationship with God, continue with your relationships with people.
Wow, that's good. Okay, so number 3, the third halftime adjustment that we're going to be looking at in today's episode is something that both you and I are very passionate about. We talk about almost every day that we see each other, is our physical health.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm passionate about it. My passion isn't revealed in obvious physical manifestations like yours.
So you're being modest.
Here's what I would say, Zach. When you start getting older, you understand this acutely.
Yeah.
If I don't really make wise choices in regarding the things that I eat, that I fuel my body with, if I don't make wise choices in terms of discipline regarding exercise and physical fitness, if I'm not getting the appropriate amount of sleep and actually resting in a way that reveals my deep trust in God, I'm probably not going to be around for the long haul, or I'm going to be limited. So when I think of physical fitness, I've got 2 grandchildren right now. I believe we'll have more in the future.
Yes.
I don't want to have to say no to anything because of choices I've made physically. I want to be able to say yes to everything. And we're living in this era because of the weirdness of these first 6 months where people are casually talking about the COVID-15, the COVID-20, the COVID-30, like you would the freshman 15, the freshman 20, the freshman 30. And I just want to say time out, halftime. We could be lingering in this for a period of time. So don't be casual with that. Right now, make some choices so that even if we're in this weird period of COVID and some restrictions regarding movement and what have you, you finish this time in better shape than you began it.
Yes.
And you can do that by eating in a way that fuels your body and mind for excellence. Exercising in a way to build strength and stamina. You want stamina. And third, resting in a way that reveals your deep trust and faith in God. Just give you one example here, Zach. I love success stories, and Jen and I have a friend that we've not seen personally in years, but yesterday she posted to her Facebook page a picture of herself 1 year ago and a picture of herself today, side by side. The change was dramatic. When I say dramatic, I mean dramatic.
Wow.
And at the bottom of the photo, she wrote these words: a year ago today, I took the first steps to better health, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy finances.
Wow.
I couldn't have imagined the mindset shifts that have taken place. In fact, due to those changes today, she is a certified health and fitness coach because she made a halftime adjustment related to her health.
Wow. That is such a cool example. And I'm trying, Pastor Chris, right now to resist the temptation to hijack this episode and spend the rest of it talking about physical health.
It would be fun.
It would be fun. Maybe another time, but I know that we're going to get to it a little bit later on. So number 3 is physical health as far as halftime adjustments. And then what's the 4th halftime adjustment that we're going to talk about?
It's pursue your mission, purpose, and calling in life. Right now is a great time for you to take a step of faith and begin pursuing the purpose God placed you on this planet for. Don't throw away the remaining 180 or so days. I just want to say to people, don't give up on 2020. Don't give up on your goals and dreams. Don't give up on you. Don't give up on God. Now, there's this cool story, and for a while, it was thought to be folklore. Chris Miller will appreciate this. Legendary Alabama football coach Paul Bear Bryant carried an inspirational prayer around with him in his wallet, and his museum has verified that when he died, this prayer was actually found in his wallet. It's a prayer that was written by a motivational speaker, Hartzell Wilson, and it goes like this. This is pretty powerful. This is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. I can waste it or use it for good. What I do today is very important because I'm exchanging a day of my life for it.
Wow.
When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving something in its place I've traded for it. I want it to be gain, not loss, good, not evil, success, not failure, in order that I shall not forget the price I paid for it.
Wow.
You know what that prayer Bryant carried with him is saying, right? Make the most of every day.
Sure.
You might have, depending on when you're listening, 182 days left. Don't concede 2020 to COVID, to an economic collapse, to a social collapse.
Yes.
You can still make this a year.
That's right.
That glorifies God and inspires the people around you.
Yeah, that's really good.
Let me demonstrate how powerful halftime adjustments are. Zach, I'm originally from Tennessee, so I love the team of my birth, but I've also lived in Alabama for more than 25 years. So when they're not playing the Tennessee Vols, I love Alabama football. And I think you have another allegiance.
Oh, Pastor Chris.
Zach.
Did you just poot me?
That was me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify to our audio listeners. That was me just blowing my tongue just out of disgust because I am a Georgia Bulldog fan, baby. Unashamed.
Zach, there have been a couple of epic games in recent history where halftime or game time adjustments made the difference between winning and losing in close games between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs. Do you remember these?
Is this why you brought me on the podcast?
This is
so
the whole
that
reason.
You could just have me on camera and audio recording to shame me and my fanhood.
I'm going to Photoshop you in a Tua jersey after this. That's going to be the cover photo for this.
Oh, Lord.
Let me briefly review history. January 2018, National Championship.
Keep it brief.
Georgia led Alabama 13-0 when Coach Nick Saban did the unthinkable. Unthinkable. At halftime, he took out superstar but struggling QB Jalen Hurts, and he put in Tua Tagovailoa, who ended up throwing 3 touchdown passes, including this incredible 41-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Smith in overtime to seal this 26-23 victory. Do you remember that?
I don't know what to say.
Let me also go.
Do you remember it? He says.
I do remember it.
How can you forget
every
it?
day
Hey,
of my
Chris, do
life.
you remember the kick 6 game? I think I do. Yeah, I remember that game. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
January 2018, National. January 2018.
SEC,
this is SEC.
Championship.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got mixed up in my notes. December 2018.
Yep.
Georgia met Alabama in the SEC title game, and that game an injured Tua struggled for much of the game. But in this strange twist of fate, I mean, this is like storybook stuff.
Yeah.
With 11 minutes out, Tua has to go out of the game. Saban puts Jalen Hurts back in, and somehow, in storybook fashion, Hurts leads Alabama to another incredible comeback victory over Georgia.
Yeah, we lost to backup quarterbacks 2 years in a row, or 2, meetings in a row with Alabama. And all I've wanted since I moved to this state when I was in the 8th grade was for Georgia to beat Alabama in football just one time. Please. It hasn't happened since then. And so, but yeah, I remember both of those games very, very, very specifically, and I remembered the pain that I felt. And, I have to say, though, just for, showing my progress and my fanhood, Pastor Chris, I remember in the 2012 SEC championship game back when we had Aaron Green and all them, we were driving down, and anyway, I won't take up too much time, but we ended up losing the game at the last second again, and I straight up punched the wall, okay? This was back in 2012, okay? I was really new in my faith, and so I did not punch any walls or break any hands or any pieces of furniture in 2018, which I'm happy to report.
Zach, for the championship game, my son-in-law, Cody, is from Georgia as well.
Yeah.
and he came over to my house to watch the game. And of course, he was so excited throughout much of the game.
Yeah.
And then when Tua threw that pass, we had such a good time.
It was a beautiful
Everybody in the house had gone to sleep except me and Cody. We're up. And of course, he had traveled down to my house to watch the game. And when Tua threw that pass, Cody did not say a word. He just dropped his head and said, I'm gone.
I'm gone.
I mean, he didn't even hug me, man. It was just like he was so brokenhearted.
I have a similar story about the kick six. I was in Montgomery at my best friend's house, who was an Auburn fan. He was at the game. I was watching the game with his roommate, and when Chris, I can't remember his name, the DB that ran the kickback, when he passed the last guy, I literally just walked out, got in my car, drove an hour and a half home with the radio off, didn't say a word, didn't listen to anything, went straight to bed.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, just to get us back on here with the halftime, we could talk about this all day. And, it's kind of fun too. But, I think even as a Georgia fan, just reflecting on that game, we're talking about halftime adjustments. And something that I've thought about since then is actually, I think that in both of those scenarios, Nick Saban had the advantage in halftime, even though they were down, according to the scoreboard, and momentum.
Yes.
And just the energy in the stadiums at halftime. Georgia had all of the favor, but I think Nick Saban actually had the advantage because he had all of that data from the first half, that just him and his brilliance. I mean, he is a brilliant leader and coach, was able to analyze and make adjustments that Georgia's coaching staff would have had no way to anticipate. Yeah. It's easy to say looking back, they should have known they were going to put in Tua after Jalen had such a bad. How would we have known that? I mean, there's no way. And the same thing could have been said in the SEC championship game when he put in Jalen Hurts after Tua got hurt. Like, there's just no way we could have prepped for that. Yeah. And so Nick Saban took what was a really misfortune or unfortunate first half and use that to his advantage.
And there's something also, Zach, that's powerful about being placed in those positions where you really have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. And by that, the tide of the game is going against you. Mm-hmm. You are being beaten in almost every facet of the game. Yeah. So why not attempt something different?
Yeah, that's right.
And I love the fact that he was willing to risk that. Yeah. And he is already, but that's part of his legend as a coach as well.
Yeah, I agree. And so I love those examples, the real world examples of halftime, because this is definitely a time in all of our lives, again, whether you're listening to this, within this year or in later years, for us to just reflect and to make some halftime adjustments. And so let's dive a little bit deeper, Pastor Chris, if you're okay with it, in these 4 areas. And the first area is to start with your relationship with God.
Yeah, here's what I want to challenge anyone in the audience to do. Establish a daily routine that sets you up for knowing and growing in your relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And that might include things like worship, gratitude, prayer, reading God's word, speaking God's word over your life. A challenge that I've been sharing for a number of years now. And I know that several in our audience are far beyond this, and more power to you. Yeah. But some in our audience have never started because they're daunted by the thought of it.
That's right.
So I've been challenging people for a number of years. If you don't have a daily practice, start with 15 minutes. Yeah. 15 minutes is not a lot. In fact, there are 1,440 minutes in every day. Yeah. So 1% of that is 14 minutes and 24 seconds. Roughly 15 minutes.
That's cool.
And all I'm simply suggesting is give God 1%.
1%. Yeah.
Start there.
Wow.
And see the difference. And for me, Zach, that looks something like this. And by the way, when I say for me, I'm not implying in any way that I've got some kind of monopoly on this.
Yeah, magic formula.
Yeah, this just works for me. It works for me. And you're going to have to find what works for you. But good. This morning, sometime after 4 o'clock, not long after 4.
Sure.
I got up, I go down, I immediately grab my workout clothes, and I go down to my office. I turn on the coffee in the kitchen, go to my office, sit in a chair, and I usually take about 2 or 3 deep breaths. And I usually start with a basic prayer.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. And I surrender this day to you, every aspect of it. And as I open your word in just a moment, I pray that your word will speak to me because I need it to grow and become more like you. And then I open God's word. I read from a daily reading plan that I've adopted. And then today was a day that I do a prayer walk on. And I took this prayer jog walk.
Yeah.
And throughout the jog, I just sort of prayed through the passages that I had read.
That's cool.
And this process really works for me.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And I know a book that you have recommended to me and that you sort of subscribe to is a book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning.
You know, I don't think this book is necessarily a Christian book.
Yep.
I can just tell you, for me, it was a powerful, life-changing book. He just talks about starting every morning the same way with what he calls his savors, and those savors are silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading and scribing or writing.
Yeah.
And I do some form of that every day.
That's good.
And it has revolutionized my life.
That's good. I mean, I think if you're listening, I would recommend you backtrack about 15 or 30 seconds and just listen to that again and write down those 6 steps that you can implement instantly into your morning routine so that you can start.
Get Hal Elrod's book.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it's a simple read. You'll probably read it in like 2 hours.
Sure,
it's pretty simple.
I got it on Audible. It didn't take any time to listen to it at all. So the first halftime adjustment that we're talking about today is start with your relationship with God, and the second halftime adjustment that we're talking about and encouraging our listeners to do is to build a vibrant, life-giving relationships with other people.
Yeah. People matter.
Absolutely.
And you need to be building your relational world. So let me I'm not going to go into detail because of the time we've spent already, but 6 basic building blocks for building great relationships. Spend time. You know, love's a 4-letter word spelled T-I-M-E. Time is a concrete, measurable expression of love. Whenever you give someone the gift of your time, you really are saying, I love you.
That's good.
Communicate regularly.
Yeah.
You know, Communication is this dynamic process of talking, listening, and understanding.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many of us, we really excel at talking. We need to grow in listening.
That's good.
And we need to realize the purpose of every exchange is to grow in understanding. You know, when I talk with Janet, the purpose should not be to win the argument. If that's my purpose, I'm an immature man.
Wow.
The purpose should be that we're growing in understanding one of the other.
Wow.
3, build trust. What I mean by that is just show up, do what you said you'd do.
Absolutely.
4, live authentically, be real. Grow in faith. Amos 3:3 says this, how can 2 walk together except they be agreed? There's something powerful when people have a common faith.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people to grow in faith. And by the way, maybe someone's listening who's not a person of faith. That doesn't mean that a person who's not a person of faith can't have a dynamic relationship with a person of faith.
Yes.
That could be an incredible relationship. As long as you respect viewpoints, you exchange ideas. I mean, you'll be surprised at what that relationship can do for you. And then 6, I say this because we often ignore it, celebrate every chance you get.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, we need to have fun in our relationships.
I think this is a really important one here with reaching out to other people. And something, and I really struggle with this actually, Pastor Chris, and something I have to be intentional about is, I can't remember how recent it was, but you encouraged our team to create personal values like for ourselves. And so I came up with a list of 6, and I won't go through all 6 of them, but one of them is simply reach out. And the reason for that is because I think for a long time, I've just waited for people to get in touch with me. And I've just kind of sat around by myself in my room thinking, oh, why am I not hanging out with people? Why don't I have any friends? And finally, it took me a long time to realize I'm going to take matters into my own hands, and I'm going to start reaching out to people. and I'm going to ask people out to have coffee with me, or I'm just going to pick up a phone and call them. And that is just something I have to put in front of my face every day, reach out to people and be intentional about building those relationships, because they're important and they're not going to happen by accident.
I can tell you this, 55 years in, the best thing about my life, the best thing are the relationships.
Absolutely.
And I'm talking about my relationship with my wife.
Sure.
I'm talking about my relationship with my kids.
Yeah.
And now a couple of grandkids.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about friendships that I wouldn't take the world for.
Yeah.
So build your relational world.
Oh, that's good. Well, let's move on to our third halftime adjustment, and that is to make your personal health a priority. I love this one. I want to talk a lot.
You know what we really do need, and Zach, I think for the sake of time, we will do that. We'll come back and do an entire episode on this subject. But here's the thought: your body is a gift from God. What you do with it is the gift you give back to Him.
Yep.
And this is really personal for me. I've lost both my dad and my mom, and they're both going to heaven. And I miss both of them every day. Here's the pain I carry in my heart. I lost them because of poor health choices that they both made.
Yep.
They died way, way premature, way too early.
Yeah.
You know, my dad was in his early to mid 60s. That's
right.
not old.
Yeah.
My mom was about 72. But I wish they had made better choices, because I would have loved my dad to meet my grandkids, his grandkids.
Yeah.
I would have loved my mom to get to meet Lucy.
Yeah.
And so many. So it's really personal. I don't want to miss out on the beauty that life affords me because of the choices that I've made.
Yeah.
So I'll just synthesize it like this today.
Sure. Yeah.
3 basic choices we can make.
Yep.
We need to eat healthy, things that fuel our body and our mind for excellence. And this doesn't have to be dramatic, like some complicated diet.
Yep.
I mean, you might just start by a few basic choices. Eat smaller portions. Eliminate processed sugars. Eliminate processed sugars. You'd be amazed what eliminating soft drinks, processed sugars would do.
Yeah.
Eliminating processed sugars. Drink lots of water. Learn to make wise, sensible, healthy choices. And I mean, you and I were talking about this. If you do this like 5 or 6 days a week, 3-4 months down the road, you're going to feel so much better.
Yes.
Second thing, exercise consistently. And I would say to people, again, don't make this monstrous. Now, I exercise really hard every day.
Yeah.
Like every day.
Sure.
But don't start there.
Yeah.
Start with 30 minutes of movement.
Sure.
Some kind of movement. Just get your body moving on a daily basis.
And I think the key to this too is I think it has to start with a framework of mind, because like, I mean, I think probably anybody listening has at some point in their life said to themselves, I'm going to lose X amount of weight, or I want to look like fill in the blank, this person. And for a lot of us, we end up meeting challenges. And I think that it kind of starts with a mindset. Like, you just have to go into it with like, you know, this is important to me because. And for those of us who are Jesus followers, for those of us who are, you know, followers of Christ, I think it's a spiritual matter. I think that the way that we care for our bodies is a spiritual matter. And for me personally, there's just been so many things that God has taught me spiritually through my physical journey. You know, I've been working out regularly, taking care of my body for about 4 or 5 years now. And my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, and my relationship with my close friends would not be what it is today if it were not for my dedication to physical fitness over the past 4 or 5 years of my life. I mean, physical health really is a spiritual health matter. So if if you're listening to this saying, oh, I hate exercise, I love, eating what I want to eat. Well, that's fine. And I think there's ways around it. I don't think that, you don't have to be a gym rat. You don't have to do CrossFit. You don't have to do any of these things that are really intimidating. You can find a way that meets your personality and your passions, but that keeps you moving, like you just said, in a direction that's going to help you have an overall holistically healthy life.
Again, my goal at this point in my life is not to look like whomever, whatever the icon is currently. My goal is to not have to say no to anything that I want to do.
That's good.
Because of poor choices I've made.
That's good.
I want to be able to say yes to any opportunity that I have, whether it's to run and play and keep up with Jack,
that's good.
Run and play, keep up with Lucy.
Yes.
I want to be able to say yes to those.
Yeah.
The third area, Zach, is to rest appropriately in a way that reveals my trust in God. And that involves sleep. It involves Sabbath. And I won't say too much about sleep because the numbers are really fuzzy in terms of the appropriate amount of sleep required by anyone. We're all really, really different. But I am saying you need sleep. Your body needs that fuel. I know for me, my biggest challenge in this area is Sabbath. I like work. I like to work.
Sure.
But I have to come to that point where I realize this. You get to a point when you work too much of depreciating returns.
Yeah.
So really that work that you're doing isn't as effective as it could be.
Sure.
So take a day off.
Yeah.
It's the best thing for your productivity and your creativity.
That's so good. So the three things for our for the number 3 is what, as far as physical health goes, is eating, diet,
in
exercise.
a way that fuels your body
right.
and your mind for excellence.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exercise
to build strength and stamina,
and then rest
in a way that reveals your trust in God.
That's good.
Whenever you rest, you're saying this because God encourages us to take a Sabbath.
It's one of the 10 commandments.
Yes. In fact, it's not an encouragement. It's a command. Thank you, Zach, for the correction.
Sorry.
So God says take a Sabbath. And when we rest, we're actually saying, God, I believe you can do more with 6 than I can do with 7.
That's so good. That's so good. All right. Well, let's keep this moving. The fourth halftime adjustment that you're encouraging us to make right now is to not give up on our mission, purpose, and calling.
Yeah, I love reading, and Simon Sinek has written a lot of incredibly great books, and he asked this question: why did you get out of bed this morning, and why should anyone care?
Wow.
Why did you get out of bed this morning, and why should anyone care?
Wow.
See, an alarm clock can tell you when to get up every morning, but it can't tell you why to get up every morning. Wow. And when people fail to answer the question, why do I get up? Why should anybody care? When people fail to understand the reason for their existence, something dies. So I just want to encourage people. You're not an accident. You were made on purpose for a purpose. Proverbs 16:4 says God made everything with a place and a purpose. And one of the most important things that you can do is this. Discover why you get out of bed every morning. That's good. And why anybody should care. Discover your mission, discover your purpose, discover your calling, and live it every day of your life.
Wow. That's really powerful, and I mean I know that I am very excited after this conversation and we stop recording to get to work on the four halftime adjustments that we've talked about today. Starting a relationship with God, number 1. Number 2, building a vibrant, life-changing, life-giving relationship with other people. Number 3, making your personal health a priority, and number 4, don't give up on your mission, purpose, and calling.
Yeah, let's just, in closing, go through a few exercises with the people. So first of all, Zach, starting with your relationship with God, I'd love for everybody to take a moment and answer this question. In fact, Zach, I'll ask you the question. Okay. What's one thing you can celebrate about the current state of your relationship with God? One thing you can celebrate.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'd like to celebrate is the fact that over 2 years ago, I was incredibly inconsistent with journaling, but it was something that I really wanted to do because a lot of people that I admire journal. And so about 2 years ago, I started journaling, and that has been a discipline that I've been able to maintain daily for the past 2 years.
So that's excellent.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest that everybody else in the audience answer is this. What's one thing that if you started today would make a significant difference or improvement in your relationship with God over the next 6 months, next 180 days?
Wow.
That inch by inch thought.
Wow.
And maybe that's starting by spending 15 minutes a day with God. Maybe it's like you beginning journaling. Maybe you want to read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And if you're not a Christian, here's a suggestion. Maybe the next step is to have a conversation with someone who is a Christian, but displays an attitude that's compelling and attractive to you.
That's good.
Just hang out with them.
Yeah.
Explore the reasons for their faith.
Yeah.
They won't pressure you if they truly love you to make a decision.
Yeah.
Just get to know them.
That's
so
really
start
helpful.
with your relationship with God.
That's really helpful. Those are really helpful exercises. Well, the second thing, the second halftime adjustment with life-giving relationships with people, we're recommending that you guys spend a few moments to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, but you can't use 7, Pastor Chris.
That's really important.
You can't use 7 when you're rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on how you are doing in the 6 areas that we briefly talked about with your relationship with other people. And I'll just briefly mention them. Hopefully you're writing this down. And the first thing was spending time with people. How are you doing? The second thing was communicating regularly. The third thing was building trust. The fourth thing was living authentically. The fifth thing was grow in faith. And the sixth was celebrating every chance that you get.
Yeah. Yeah, do that inventory and see where you wind up. It can be a powerful, powerful journey. And, when we were talking about this exercise, you talked to me about the elimination of 7 as an option. And the reason being, we don't want people to lull themselves into a false comfort. Because if you hit 7, it's like, I'm doing okay. And you can lull yourself to sleep when you really need to grow. If you're at a 6, you should feel discomfort.
Yes.
Because if you continue in that state, you could slide into a 5 and be on the precipice of a slide even further downward.
Wow.
Now, if you're at an 8, you should feel really good and excited.
Absolutely.
But you should also know, I can still grow.
Yes.
If you're at a 10, turn off the podcast now.
Start your own podcast.
We can't help you.
Oh, man. That's great. So do those exercises for the second halftime adjustment. The third halftime adjustment is to make your personal health a priority. And we want you to take some time to reflect with this question. Which of the 3 areas that we discussed, being your diet, eating healthy, your exercise, and your rest, which of those 3 areas represent your greatest opportunity for growth?
Yeah, and for me, Zach, it's really easy taking a day off. I've got to improve in the area of rest.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where you would land on those.
Well, I would land with eating. I love ice cream and chips.
And finally, Zach, we'll wrap it up by saying the 4th halftime adjustment is this: don't give up on your mission, purpose, and calling. Simon Sinek again. Why did you get out of bed this morning? Why should anyone care? If you've not taken the time to identify your mission, purpose, and calling, take some time. Create a formal written down mission statement.
Yeah.
And you can do that for various areas of your life.
Yeah.
We have one as a church.
Sure.
Janet and I have a mission statement for our marriage.
Yeah.
You have one for your professional career.
That's right.
You can have as many of these statements as are areas in your life.
Yeah.
You need them, and you need to regularly review them.
That's good.
Personally, for Janet and myself, I sort of stole my wife's. It's Psalm 119, verse 175, which says this: let me live that I may praise you. And that's the goal of my life. I want to live so that I might praise him.
Wow.
I want to somehow make God smile.
Wow.
When it's all over.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, that wraps up our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's been cool to hang out. I just want to remind everybody, this is the Real Faith Podcast with Chris Goins. It features authentic, vulnerable, raw conversations on a variety of topics with a view towards helping you apply your faith and God's word to today's world. We're already, at the time of this recording, only 2 episodes in, over 700 downloads. We're going to hit 1,000 plus with this one. And by the way, when we hit 10,000, we got a special prize we're going to give
celebrate.
away. Yeah. So subscribe today and share it with your friends. God bless. Have a great one. This has been the Real Faith Podcast with Chris Goins. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.